In his 1966 book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, Evidence of Advanced Civilization in the Ice Age, Professor Charles Hapgood makes a compelling case that advanced knowledge of the geography of the world existed long before the 16th and 17th century European age of explorers. Professor Hapgood's starting point is the Piri-Reis map. Discovered in 1929 in the old imperial palace in Constantinople, the map indicates its date of creation as 1513 AD. It also identifies itself as the property of Piri, an admiral, Reis, of the Turkish Navy, thus its common name, Piri-Reis. To modern eyes, the map looks old and inaccurate. In the first place, it does not use the Mercator projection style to which we have become accustomed. The Mercator projection style presents a flat representation of the spherical Earth by making the lines of longitude, those running north and south, equally spaced, even at the north and south poles, where in reality the lines of longitude meet. The Mercator projection style map is very familiar to us. We rarely see any other style. See Figure 16 in the bonus PDF. But the Mercator projection style map is not without problems. The map makes landmasses in the far north or far south appear to be much larger than they actually are. Greenland appears to be much larger than Europe, when in fact it is only a fraction of the size. Antarctica appears to be enormous and vastly elongated, and doesn't resemble its true size and shape at all. However, the Mercator projection does a good job of presenting the landmasses on either side of the equator, where the majority of people live. The Piri-Reis map, on the other hand, uses an entirely different map-making style, one that today has fallen completely out of use. Whereas in the Mercator projection style, the lines of longitude are always vertical and north is always directly up, the Piri-Reis map has different orientations for north depending on what part of the map you're reviewing. See Figure 17 in the bonus PDF. The style is known as Portolan. Many maps contemporaneous with the Piri-Reis were drawn in this style. At first glance, because we mentally compare with the Mercator projection, the continents appear distorted. Professor Hapgood and a dedicated band of graduate students spent many years painstakingly translating the Portolan style into the Mercator style. Once they unraveled the underlying approach to its construction, an approach that indicates that the mapmakers had known the principles of spherical trigonometry, they found the Piri-Reis map to be highly accurate. In fact, it was more accurate than it could possibly have been. The Piri-Reis map accurately shows parts of the coastline of Antarctica known as Queen Maud Land. Not only was Antarctica unknown in the 1500s when Piri-Reis lived, but also that section of the coastline, accurately drawn on the Piri-Reis map, is currently under ice, and has been for thousands of years. We know the Piri-Reis map is accurate because when compared to modern maps of Antarctica, maps made with the aid of seismic mapping techniques, it shows the same actual contours of the continent that are, today, hidden under hundreds, even thousands of feet of ice. The Piri-Reis map also shows rivers and lakes in what is now the Sahara Desert of North Africa. These features were commonly dismissed as fanciful embellishments of an ignorant mapmaker, but Professor Hapgood wasn't so quick to dismiss them. The overall accuracy of the map had already greatly impressed him. In particular, the accurately drawn presence of Antarctica on a map made more than 100 years before Antarctica was discovered seemed to be more than simply a lucky guess. How could the map's accuracy be explained? Most of the writing on the map refers to the map itself, but in one section, Piri-Reis himself explains that his map is actually a copy of a much older map. In fact, Professor Hapgood and his team went on to discover that the Piri-Reis map is an amalgam of maps merged together and copied from copies of copies that appear to have originated sometime before the 1st or 2nd millennium BC. Earlier than that, the trail runs cold. Undaunted by this highly unorthodox finding, Professor Hapgood took another approach to dating the origins of the Piri-Reis map. Instead of assuming that the mapmaker couldn't have known the contour of Antarctica in Queen Maud Land, and that the Sahara was a desert bereft of lakes and rivers, he asked the question, when in the past would this section of Queen Maud Land have been free of ice, and when in the past would the Sahara have had rivers and lakes? The answer to both is the same. From approximately 5000 to 3000 BC, the climatic period known as the Mousterian subpluvial or the Neolithic pluvial would have created both a green Sahara and an ice-free Queen Maud Land. Modern satellite photos of the Sahara reveal the contours of ancient rivers and lakes that once existed where now the climate is hot and dry. We also know that during this era, the ice briefly retreated from the coast of Antarctica in Queen Maud Land. Hapgood's meticulous research indicates that not only were the principles of spherical trigonometry known long before their generally accepted data formulation, but also that, to have known and mapped so precisely the longitudes of the world's landmasses, ancient man must have traveled the globe freely and extensively. Hapgood is not alone in coming to this conclusion. One can find intriguing evidence of racial, religious, and linguistic similarities between ancient China and ancient North America, and between ancient India and ancient South America and Mesoamerica. The similarities and connections are so strong that direct communication with and/or settlement of those areas by the ancient Chinese and Indians seem very likely. Hendon M. Harris Jr.'s book, The Asiatic Fathers of America, makes a strong case that the descending Treta Yuga Chinese frequently traveled to North America. Harris derives his conclusions from close study of the Fusang maps, which have been part of Chinese lore for millennia. On close examination of the maps, Harris began to believe that the land of the rising sun was not, after all, Japan, but the west coast of America. Particular descriptions of prominent geographic features, especially a convincing description of the Grand Canyon, led Harris to a lifetime of diligent research, during which he matched location after location in North America to the Fusang maps. It has long been agreed that the North American Indians are racially a match to the Chinese, but current theory has it that the indigenous Americans migrated over a frozen ice bridge from Asia to North America in the 13th millennium BC. Harris suggests that these distant ancestors to the Chinese, however and whenever they first populated North America, were repeatedly visited by their seafaring Chinese cousins. The result was a two-way exchange of culture. For example, he finds strong similarities between certain Hopi and Chinese myths. The Olmec of Mesoamerica, whose earliest origins are obscure, show cultural and racial connections to Vedic India and Africa. The Olmec are best known for the immense stone heads that they left behind in the jungle of the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. 17 of them have been found so far. The oldest has been dated to approximately 1350 BC. The heads each weigh as much as 25 tons and portray people who seem to have negroid features and wear a distinctive helmet. The Olmec also left exquisite small carvings in jade, some of which reveal figures in classic Hatha Yoga postures, including an inverted pose and the scorpion pose. The Olmec are thought to have been the first people to use what is now popularly known as the Mayan calendar. The Mayan calendar has a start date of 3114 BC, which coincides almost precisely with the 3100 BC beginning of descending Dwapara Yuga. Did the ancestors of the Olmec live in Mesoamerica at the start date of the Mayan calendar, or did they bring the calendar from ancient India? Many scholars, beginning with the venerable Wilhelm von Humboldt, have commented on similarities between South American and Indian cultures. Humboldt, considered to be the father of linguistics, found numerous similarities between Quechua, the language family of the Andes, and Sanskrit. Akapana, clouds colored by sun, is Aka, painting. Chani, price, is Jani, produce. Chinkat, jaguar, is Sinha, lion. Chirao, resplendent, is Sura, to shine. Huakra, horn, is Vakra, curved. Kakarpa, tent, is Karpara, parasol. Mita, time, is mita, step passage of time. Muti, pounded corn, is mut, to pound. Nana, sister, is nanda, sister. Pakni, to break, is pike, to break. Paksa, the moon, is paksa, the full moon. Pisi, small, is piece, to break into small pieces. Pitata, bedroom, is pita, house, cottage. Simpa, cord, is samb, to tie. Soro, spiritual liquor, is sura, spiritual liquor. Sokta, 6, is saas, 6. Dr. Robert von Heine-Geldern, noted ethnologist, archaeologist, and historian of the ancient world, made a lifelong study of the ancient cultures of Southeast Asia, beginning in India and extending to Indonesia. Dr. von Heine-Geldern found that the Mayan and Southeast Asian cultures had very strong similarities. On the basis of ancient Indians' known use of ships to Indonesia, he saw no reason that they could not have crossed the ocean to Central America. Western theories of the development of civilization focus on the Fertile Crescent, an area including the Tigris and Euphrates River valleys, the Levant, and the Upper Nile. Western archaeologists are wary, even grudging, about including India or China in the same chronology of the development of civilization. Further, the idea that India and China had attained high degrees of development before the Fertile Crescent civilizations arose, let alone that these cultures were capable of world travel and the dissemination of their culture to North and South America, receives little acknowledgement in the West. Cultural pride has led some scholars to proclaim, in the East as well as the West, that their ancient culture is the true beginning of civilization. Such claims have obscured the perception of what was likely one interconnected world culture in Treta Yuga from which all ancient civilizations descended. Rather than civilization developing from one tiny area around 3100 BC and expanding outward from there, instead, a number of closely related world cultures already existed, but began to become isolated and lose contact in 3100 BC when mankind's innate ability to communicate telepathically over large distances had run its course. Ancient maps and strong cultural and linguistic connections between Asia and North and South America present evidence unexplained by the current mainstream view. We believe that as more information surfaces, a picture of a rich worldwide Treta Yuga culture will emerge. Ancient standards. More examples of unexplained knowledge exist in the intriguing evidence for ancient units of measurement based on the dimensions of the Earth, geodetic standards as they are called today, as well as for a surprisingly high degree of standardized use of such units. The idea of basing a standard of length on the dimensions of the Earth is believed to be suggested first by a French priest, Gabriel Mouton, in 1670 AD. Mouton proposed as a standard the length of 1 minute of arc along a meridian. In June 1799 AD, France adopted the metric system. The meter was originally defined as 1/10,000,000th part of a meridional quadrant of Earth, based on measurements of the arc of the meridian between Dunkirk and Barcelona. Evidence suggests, however, that our metric system was by no means the first geodetic measurement system. The historian of metrology, Livio Catulo Stecchini, contributed a 95-page index to Peter Tompkins' classic, Secrets of the Great Pyramid. Stecchini discusses the geodesy of the ancient Egyptians in considerable detail. He shows that from pre-dynastic times, that is the end of descending Treta Yuga, they carefully sited cities, monuments, and important markers according to accurate lines of latitude and longitude. Because the Nile's yearly flooding obliterated boundary markers, the Egyptians had to resurvey annually the entire river valley. There is no question that they were skilled at measuring surface distances and angles. Stecchini describes a pre-dynastic geodetic system that was superseded by a less precise system in the dynastic period. He shows that pre-dynastic Egyptians were well aware that the distance corresponding to a degree of longitude changed with latitude. he asserts that even the oblate shape of the Earth was taken into account. Stachini concludes that the Egyptian geodetic system implies precise knowledge of the circumference of the Earth. Richard Thompson discusses ancient measures in his book, Mysteries of the Sacred Universe. He relates the circumference of the Earth to the Hindu Yojana, Hasta, and Krosha, the Khmer Hat, and the Chinese Li. He concludes that those who defined the ancient units must have understood Earth's shape and size very well. In 1955, Alexander Thom published a statistical examination of the megalithic sites in Britain in the Journal of the Royal Statistical Society. After carefully surveying over 250 megalithic sites in Britain and Scotland, including Avebury, Stonehenge, Hill of Staines, and the Ring of Brodgar, Professor Thom concludes that they were all constructed on the basis of a common unit of measure, what he calls the megalithic yard. Many of the megalithic structures of Britain and Scotland were begun about 3300 BC, close to the end of descending Treta Yuga. The megalithic yard continued to be used as a building standard for over 1,000 years into descending Dwapara Yuga. We find another example of a level of standardization that is not explained by established theory in the Indus Valley Civilization in present-day Pakistan. The Indus Valley Civilization is best known for its two largest cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. The ruins of these cities were rediscovered in 1842, but were not thoroughly excavated until the 1920s. The earliest layers of these two cities date to about 3300 BC, near the end of the descending Treta Yuga. What first struck many of the archaeologists was the fact that the two cities were laid out in a rectilinear grid, with streets intersecting at right angles. Further excavation revealed that there were conduits for fresh water to enter the city and sewers to remove waste. Both cities possess central areas with sizable public baths, government buildings, and large storage areas for grain. Archaeologists were further amazed that the oldest layers of the cities showed the highest level of organization and building quality. They found no evidence of experimentation, no earlier layer of cruder development. These cities sprang forth as though designed. The sense of planned building is reinforced by the most astonishing discovery of all. All of the Indus Valley Civilization, extending across 100,000 square miles and covering a time span beginning in 3300 BC of over 1,000 years, used the same standardized size of mud brick. Their most basic building block was the same wherever the Indus Valley Civilization expanded. The bricks were of such high quality and so uniformly made that in the 20th century, Indus Valley Civilization ruins were dismantled and the bricks reused by the British for railroad bridges and embankments. The existence of so many standardized and often geodetically derived ancient measures cannot be accidental. These measures provide strong evidence that ancient man knew the dimensions of the earth, and further indicate that he applied the knowledge systematically to surveying, building, and city planning. The Neolithic Non-Revolution. According to mainstream archaeological theory, the years from roughly 5000 to 3000 BC, corresponding to the middle to ending years of the descending Treta Yuga, were the years that saw the key developments that led to the birth of civilization, the so-called Neolithic Revolution. According to the theory, this period saw key discoveries in agriculture, animal domestication, and the use of the plow especially, as well as the establishment of increasing numbers of settlements, all of which are believed to have finally combined serendipitously and synergistically around 3300 BC in Sumeria to create the cradle for the birth of civilization. This cradle of civilization view of human development is purely evolutionary theory. The reasoning is that small pockets of Stone Age people, Neolithic means New Stone Age, made specific discoveries and inventions that were then passed on to other small pockets, which in turn passed them on to others. The theory has it that the new discoveries and inventions started in one location, were spread from there, were enhanced and improved as they spread, until a critical mass of new ideas and inventions came together in one location, the Tigris and Euphrates river valleys. At this point, mankind made a revolutionary leap into civilization, the Neolithic Revolution. Linguist and archaeologist Gordon Childe is credited with coining the term Neolithic Revolution in the 1920s. Though still widely accepted, this theory of the birth of civilization, like many archaeological theories born in the first half of the 20th century, is not holding up well in the light of new discoveries. Far from having emerged just prior to their miraculous convergence in Sumeria around 3300 BC, all the key developments believed to have been responsible for the Neolithic Revolution are now known to have been developed for thousands of years before Sumeria's rise. Nor were these developments spread by diffusion, one group teaching another, which in turn teaches another. Most of the key developments believed to be responsible for the birth of civilization not only existed long before Sumeria's rise, but existed independently all over the world. Rye, emmer wheat, einkorn wheat, and barley, all cultivated grains, were grown in the area of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers as early as 11,000 BC, 8,000 years before the rise of Sumeria. Millet and rice were being grown in China by 10,000 BC. Figs were being grown in the Jordan River Valley in 9000 BC. Pepo squash and maize were being grown in Mexico by 8000 BC and 7000 BC respectively. Moscata squash and arrowroot were being grown in South America by 8000 BC. Peanuts, potatoes, and manioc only slightly later. Only recently, taro and banana were determined to have been grown in New Guinea by 8000 BC. We can see from these recent finds that man knew how to cultivate a large variety of fruits and grains thousands of years before the emergence of what is considered civilization, and not just in the Near East. Man grew food all over the world. Yet, the ability to grow food did not, as the theory of the Neolithic Revolution would have it, cause people to stop gathering wild foods. The two methods existed side by side for millennia. Many of these new discoveries regarding ancient agriculture are the result of applying new methods of research and analysis to archaeology, and these new methods have not yet been extensively used. Once the new methodology is widely applied by archaeologists, evidence of even older and more widespread agriculture will likely be found. New methods of research and analysis are also being applied to dating animal domestication. In addition to DNA analysis of large populations of domestic and wild animals to ascertain when certain species were first domesticated, scientists are looking for patterns in the shape of animal bones, patterns that indicate human handling, and for milk fat in ancient pottery, which indicates systematic milking of domesticated animals. New findings resulting from these new methods indicate that animal domestication occurred considerably earlier than previously believed. Fossil evidence of horses in close proximity to human settlements has been found in Afghanistan dating to 15,000 BC, at least 5,000 years earlier than horses were previously thought to have been domesticated. Evidence of the domestication of goats in the Middle East can be found dating to 7,000 BC. Especially intriguing, because so completely contrary to prevailing theory, is a new study indicating that the pig may have been domesticated independently in at least 7 locations around the world. Mainstream archaeologists have assumed for years that the pig was domesticated in only 1 or 2 places in Asia, and that the associated knowledge was spread from those sites. While at the University of Durham, Keith Dobney, who conducted an extensive study of the domestication of the pig, said, "Our findings turn this theory on its head." Dobney's study indicates that domestication also occurred independently in Central Europe, Italy, northern India, and the mainland and islands of Southeast Asia. The plow, once considered essential to the Neolithic Revolution, is now known to have been used as early as 6000 BC in several areas in what is now modern Turkey, including Çatalhöyük. New discoveries are pushing the dating of pottery similarly farther and farther back in time. Evidence from finds in the Yuchanyan cave in Hunan province, China, indicates that fired pottery, once believed to be a catalyst of the Neolithic Revolution, was made in China as early as 18,000 BC. We also know that the Jomon people of Japan were making fired pottery by 12,000 BC. Even if we give the theory of the Neolithic Revolution the benefit of the doubt, and assume that the revolution required not only the initial critical developments, but also the immediate proximity of a significant number of these critical developments in order for the Great Leap of civilization, the theory still falls down. In the immediate area of the Tigris and Euphrates river valleys, we find evidence of cultivated grains as far back as 10,000 BC, domesticated goats and oxen from 7,000 BC, and fired pottery and the plow from 6,000 BC, all 3,000 to 7,000 years before the supposed Neolithic Revolution. According to Child's theory, the Neolithic Revolution was irresistible. Once man discovered the agrarian lifestyle, the obvious superiority of settling down in one place, growing food, and using animals for food and labor would have swept aside the inferior lifestyle of the so-called hunter-gatherers. Either man was incredibly stupid, since it took at least 3,000 to 7,000 years to see the benefits of civilization once he had the means to make it happen, or there was something wrong with the theory. What is becoming clearer with each new discovery is that the people of descending Treta Yuga knew and used all the discoveries considered key to the inevitable start of civilization long before the rise of Sumeria in 3300 BC, and yet consistently chose instead to live lightly on the earth. Why? We think the reason may be that the mental capabilities of Treta Yuga man made what is today considered civilization unnecessary and unattractive. Treta Yuga man saw the systematic physical exploitation of the earth for food and shelter as the lower, not the higher way of life. Treta Yuga man clearly knew how to grow food, domesticate animals, build settlements, make pottery. In addition, there is evidence of basic dentistry in Mehrgar in 6000 BC, and a map of the world by 5000 BC. But Treta Yuga man simply didn't feel compelled to use his practical knowledge, as the theory of the Neolithic Revolution would have it, to create civilization as we define it. Instead, he used his knowledge as he chose, where he chose, but otherwise continued to live lightly on the earth. It is only as Treta Yuga man's mental abilities waned in the last centuries of descending Treta Yuga, when he could no longer rely on using his advanced abilities to provide his needs, that we see him turn to widespread agriculture and the city structure as an alternative. It isn't until the Sandhis, or transition periods at the end of Treta Yuga and the beginning of Dwapara Yuga, that the famous ancient cities sprang up around the world. Ur, Sumer, Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Memphis, and South America's Caral. As Treta Yuga ended, a new Dwapara Yuga pattern emerged. The knowledge embedded in the Vedas indicates advanced understanding of astronomy and mathematics. The Piri-Reis map indicates knowledge of spherical trigonometry, longitudes and latitudes, and suggests world travel. Cultural and linguistic evidence in North and South America indicates that such travel was common and continuous. The megalithic yard and other ancient measures indicate a high degree of sophistication and knowledge of the size and shape of the earth. And some early cities, such as Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, show clear evidence of thoughtful planning. It appears that civilization, or at least what we think of as civilization, was born not from a serendipitous revolutionary leap forward, but from deliberate choice resulting from man's changing awareness and motivation as he descended into Dwapara Yuga. Beginning with the Sandhi, or transition period from Treta Yuga to Dwapara Yuga in 3400 BC, man began to rely more on the material world to meet his needs. But he did so with much greater awareness and knowledge than the current linear theory of development can explain. Instead of Stone Age people with no mental development pulling themselves up from the mud, we see instead intelligent people accepting a more material lifestyle and approaching it with system, order, and method, as is evident from their knowledge of math, physics, geodetic standards, geography, and especially energy.